Okay, guys. Oh, not me yet, Maheen. Closely. Soon. Any day now. But thank you. Any day now. All right. So in the chat, really quick, can you please let me know if you are taking that SAT exam or whatever it is on Wednesday? Okay. Like everyone. All right. Let's try that again. Is there anyone not taking that exam on Wednesday? You have to go into school. The SATs. Anyone not taking it? All right. So Neve's not taking it. Rosemary's not taking it. Okay. All right. Well, let me give you a little bit of a heads up for Wednesday. Wednesday, if you are taking that exam, then obviously you are still responsible for a social studies assignment. The good thing is you're watching a review video, so it's not necessarily something where you have to be there live. It's helpful maybe because you can ask me questions, but yeah, it's a perfectly fine assignment to miss live, so don't worry about it if you're taking the exam. You will have to kind of get it. Let me kind of explain what this week will look like before we get into today's assignment. So today's very heavy note day, but you're not really taking notes really the rest of the week. So, kind of get through today, and you won't have any more notes for the rest of the week. So that's kind of cool. Today is double period Monday, but the second period assignment is embarrassingly short. It'll take you like 5-10 minutes, so I can't even consider it like a second period assignment. So this is not the worst day that you've had. Usual final textbook Thursday will be due on Thursday. And then also on Thursday, we will be, you will be getting your thematic essay that you'll be working on over February break. Pretty much every break you get an essay you have to do. But I was nice on this break because it's a thematic essay, so it's a lot less work. But we will go over that all on Thursday. Okay. Today will be a note day. Tuesday, Wednesday will be video days. I don't think it's exactly the hardest week you guys have had. I will give you a heads up. At the end of the week, I'm doing a classwork check-in. So if you are missing a couple of assignments, I will be doing a classwork check-in on Google Classroom. So I can tell you every break we have homework. Yes. You do. Well, you guys know I give it to you a little bit early, so you're always welcome to work on it, though this is not one of those breaks. Okay, so let me see something quick. Just looking at my other screen. For classwork check-in. All right, so make sure you just caught up. Why do we even need work during break? Milagros, this whole year's been a break. Come on now. I don't even know that, Abigail. I just want to make sure you guys have time to write your essays, and we have to make sure that you guys get enough practice with it, which you guys are getting better and better at doing, which is good. All right, so this is the breakdown for the week. I think it's a rather easy week. Yeah, I think all of us do, including your teacher. And that's maybe it's not something I should admit, but I come in that following Monday, I'm like, okay, what were we working on before I got here? We got here, but that's okay. All right, Milagros, follow that. Just letting you know now. A lot of notes today. So let's get to it. So pretty much if you did Friday's assignment, which only like half the kids did, not great. Not great. Getting lazy. Getting lazy. All right, this was a very, I thought, good reading to review pretty much the whole week of the muckrakers and all of the people. I recognize this part of the unit can be tough because of all the different names you see. I understand that, but it is important to try and match up what each particular muckraker does. And just a side note, when you guys eventually take your Unit 4 test, which will be a week or two after you get back from break, Unit 4 is always the hardest test. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that, and I want to mention this now to you guys. Number one, there's a lot of topics. Okay, we go over immigration, industrialization, the progressive era, and then when you get back, you'll learn about imperialism. That's number one. Number two, there's a ton of names. okay, which can often throw people for a loop. I mean, not take away the muckrakers, but think back to industrialization and Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller and just a lot of names. Number 3, you have 2 breaks that you have to deal with, okay? 2 breaks. You have February break, and then you have your midterm review break, okay, where we spent a week not really talking about any of this stuff. So this unit almost takes 2 months, and it's a lot of topics, and I just know Unit 4 is, one of the hardest tests of the year. So please, as you guys go into break, you are going to have a thematic essay. It will be good to kind of look back at some notes because this is just always universally one of the hardest tests. So I want to kind of let you know of that. And then you guys have a third tough thing is most likely I will be on parental leave. So it gets, you guys it's very tough for you guys. All right. Unit 4 test is going to be tough. Usually kids do okay on the midterm and then they take a dive on Unit 4 and it's like a shock to them. But this is how it's been going for the last 3-4 years. Break starts on Friday. Lunar New Year, and then we're off. It's also Abraham Lincoln's birthday, but it's we're celebrating Lunar New Year, and then we have President's Week off. Okay, so let's get into today's big note day assignment. So make sure you're taking your good notes. So the focus question is, how did the progressive era presidents change how the government acts? So if you think back to Thursday, the Gilded Age presidents, right? Grover Cleveland, Chester Arthur, Benjamin Harrison. These were not exactly presidents for the people. And what I mean by that is they were more aligned with big business. They were more aligned with making sure that the government was protecting the economy and the business. These 3 presidents will take an opposite approach, okay, starting with Teddy Roosevelt, okay, who you'll learn about a lot more in imperialism, William Howard Taft, and Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, you'll learn a lot more when we get to imperialism and World War I. But we're going to look at them now from the progressive era standpoint because we know at this point, hopefully I've done a good enough job in telling you this, presidents do a lot of different things. So we're going to look at them through the lens of the progressive era. Now, Teddy Roosevelt is much more known for what he does during the imperialism time, okay, which is you'll learn about when we get back from break. But he does do some important things when it comes to the progressive era, okay? So please copy this down. There are 5, count them, 5 slides today. So get that hand ready and let's get to it. So let's meet Teddy Roosevelt, president number 26. He is on Mount Rushmore. Okay, he is known as one of the better presidents, okay, at least in the top 10, most people would say pretty undeniably. He was an interesting guy, okay? Now, the thing you're not writing down is he created a political party called the Progressive Party, a.k.a. the Bull Moose Party. But when he was elected president in 1901, or 1900 and 1904, he ran for the Republican Party. He then eventually ran for a 3rd term and lost in the election of 1912, running for the Progressive Party. But the reason I like starting off with this is the progressive era. All right? How in the world did you write that fast? Okay. So let's look at the first thing and why we have to know him from a progressive era standpoint. He is known as a trust-busting president. Okay. He's really the first president who really backs the people and not big business. And he is fully against monopolies. All right. So he is known as the first trust-busting president. Prior to this, there was trust-busting people that was more in the Supreme Court or the legislative branch, but he is the first president to really come out as a trust buster. Okay, so he gets the federal government to break up a lot of monopolies or trusts, okay, as we also know him. And he's the first president to be publicly against monopolies. He campaigned against being against monopolies. And he's one of the more popular presidents because he's helping out a lot of, middle class and poor people when they break up monopolies. If you want to create a business, you're going to have a better chance of succeeding now without a big monopoly running over you. Okay, so that's number 1. He is also the first president to start what's known the conservation movement. You guys know what conservation is, correct? Conservation is trying to protect the environment. He's the first president to really have a stand with that. Okay, he is concerned with the environment, so he creates the first national park system. Okay, and the goal of a national park's like a Yellowstone. I'm actually going to Google right now how many national parks there are. Okay, there's a total of 423 national park sites in the United States. Each one of these national parks, they're going to try and conserve a natural resource. Think back to the Great Plains. Okay, think back to the Great Plains with the buffalo that were being hunted. Well, that was a huge problem. You're taking a natural resource, have close to 10 million buffalo, and by 1895, you're down to less than 100. Okay, there's only so much resources in the United States, whether that's an animal, whether that's a plant, whether it's a crop. We only have so much of it. We want to make sure we're protecting our environment, because if we lose it, we're never going to get it back. So he was very big into conservation. He's also known as our first conservation president, okay, which I'm writing to the chat here. And really, he was the one breaking up this whole, not only breaking up monopolies, but he's also known as being progressive, as trying to look at the environment, where throughout the industrial age, that wasn't a thing, because you had all of these factories, and these factories was emitting pollution into the air, and it just wasn't a big deal to people back then. It wasn't a major focus. Teddy Roosevelt kind of puts a step forward to making it more of a focus. Okay? And I don't think I've ever seen the square deal come up on the Regents, at least not a multiple choice. But he is, one of the biggest things he's known for is the square deal, which is, let's ask you guys in math. How is a square different from all other shapes, like a rectangle or a rhombus or anything? What is unique about a square? All equal sides. Excellent. Okay. Mr. Baduzzi would be very happy. I don't even know if you guys do geometry in algebra, but maybe you guys do. But that's kind of the point of what the square deal was. He wanted to make sure everyone had an equal opportunity to succeed in the United States. Okay? And he didn't really care if you were born rich or if you were born poor. He wanted to make sure every single person had a good opportunity to succeed economically and make money. And I often say America is not a perfect country, but I definitely think no matter who you are, if you're born rich or born poor, everyone has an opportunity to make great money. Okay, there's a lot of countries where if you're born poor, you're never getting out of it, or it's extremely rare. Now, if you're poor in the United States, is it harder to maybe get some more money as you get older? Absolutely, but it's not nearly that tough if you make some really good decisions and you have some luck on your side and what have you. So Teddy Roosevelt wants to make sure that's clear. He says, if we don't have monopolies, if we give everyone an equal opportunity to really succeed, it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, they should be able to succeed. Okay, you often hear of, many famous people, right, started with nothing in the United States. Okay, whether it's a famous rapper or actor or actress or TikTok person, whatever the hell you guys are into these days. Andrew Carnegie is a great example. Andrew Carnegie became the second richest human being in American history, came here with nothing. All right. But he wanted to give everyone an opportunity, and this is known as his square deal. And he basically came out strong against the business owners and tried to give people more of an equal opportunity to succeed. All right. So that is Teddy Roosevelt. Okay. Let's start with this Regents question. President Theodore Roosevelt. And I say Teddy because his nickname is Teddy. President Theodore Roosevelt was called a trust buster because he what? Three is correct. Four would be correct if we looked at him from a conservation perspective, but trust buster, correct answer is three. He supported legal action against business monopolies. If you know trust means monopolies, you should be perfectly fine to answer it. Okay? Let's meet William Howard Taft, the next president. Now, we'll talk about Teddy Roosevelt a lot more in imperialism, but that's his progressive era help. William Howard Taft is very similar to Teddy Roosevelt. So just a couple of things about William Howard Taft. Want to make sure that's something here. First off, he's the biggest president we've ever had. I don't know why I like saying that, but he is also the biggest president we've ever had. He's a rather large human being. All right. But he was also in the same political party. I'm just making sure. I wanted to see Give me 1 second, guys. Teddy Roosevelt, VP. Charles Fairbanks, I know that. Okay, so basically William Howard Taft was a very close ally. He might have been in the cabinet of Teddy Roosevelt, I'm not 100% sure. But Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft were very similar in the way they handled things because they were from the same political. So Teddy Roosevelt has a very successful presidency, so they're going to elect William Taft again as a Republican and kind of continue the same path. So Teddy Roosevelt, William Taft, whether you're learning both of them, both very similar. Okay? He's also known as a trust buster, but not as big of a trust buster as Teddy Roosevelt. You could see this same question on the Regents, just change the name. Okay, you could say President William Taft was called a trust buster because he what? I've seen that before once. Right, but usually it's more Theodore Roosevelt. He's also kind of known for changing America's economic policy a little bit. He was kind of big in moving away from laissez-faire from economics. He wanted to put more regulations and control on business owners and monopolies. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to learn about this a lot over the next couple of weeks. But regulations is basically when you stop, I don't want to say that, when you control someone from doing something. It just makes it a little bit harder to have complete hands off. It's like a teacher who's a little bit more on top of you guys, like your parents who are a little bit more is like, you get grounded, right? Some more regulation, some more control on what you can and cannot do in the house. And that's kind of what William Taft was. He didn't want this whole hands-off approach because a completely social Darwinism, laissez-faire attitude leads to monopolies and leads to some, bad conditions we saw. The progressive era is just trying to reform a lot of those. So William Taft was big on putting some more regulations because we don't want the same problems to happen again. Okay, there is a Supreme Court case called Standard Oil versus the United States. I've never seen it on the Regents, but it's pretty big during his presidency, which is the biggest monopoly at the time is broken up under Taft. And ultimately, we've seen this now. We've seen now 3 Supreme Court cases between the sugar company, okay, the E.C. Knight Company, right, from 1895, broke up monopoly. Northern Securities versus the United States broke up a monopoly, and this is a third. So we don't need to rewrite this one down. But this did happen during his presidency. Okay. All right. So that's Taft. So we've done, at this point, we've done Roosevelt, we've done Taft, and now we've done Woodrow Wilson. Now we're going to look at Woodrow Wilson through a couple different lenses. We'll look at him from the Progressive Era lens, then we'll see him from the Imperialism lens, and then we'll see him from the World War I lens. And he's an interesting president. I'll give you a minute to copy this down. He's an interesting president because some people say he's one of the better presidents, and then you have a conversation with some people, and some historians believe he's the worst president we've ever had. He's a very polarized president, meaning that some people love him, some people really hate him, think he's horrible. So I'll try and teach both sides of it. Okay. So let's first take a look, before we get into him, we need to look at the election of 1912. The election of 1912 is a little bit of a unique one. Okay? And I kind of want to explain why. It's not because the winner of the popular vote lost the election. That's not why it is. So it's not in the same lane as 2000, 2016, 1888, 1876, and 1824. The election of 1912 is unique, though, because Woodrow Wilson is going to win but he's not going to get even close to a majority of the votes. I shouldn't explain it like that. He doesn't come close to getting over 50% of the votes. Here's the reason. The election of 1912, okay, comes down to 3 candidates, which is rare. The only other time this really happened was in 1860, at least one that we've learned of. Usually it just comes down to 2 candidates. But this one was different. So we have 3 candidates here, and it's all 3 of them in the photo. So I'm going to go back for a second. Okay, so let's go to here. William Howard Taft won the previous election as a Republican, so he's running for his 2nd term re-election. Okay? Teddy Roosevelt wants to become a president again for a 3rd term. However, this time, he's going to run for a different political party, the 3rd political party. It's called the Progressive or the Bull Moose Party. It's called the Bull Moose Party because this Teddy Roosevelt had been on a moose many times before, and many people have seen photos of him. And we'll learn more about him in imperialism, but that's the name of his political party. But we're going to know it as the Progressive Party. Now, these 2 guys, as I said, are very similar. Okay? So what do both of these guys do? They're kind of running for the same people. So they kind of take votes away from one another. So who does that leave? This leaves Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat, who has a little bit different ideas, okay, running for the Democrats, and he's eventually going to win. Okay, and I'll show you how. Okay, so he won the election in 1912, which had 3 candidates opposed to 2. Wilson will win because Roosevelt and Taft took votes away from each other. Now, you can see Theodore Roosevelt won a lot more of the votes than William Howard Taft. Okay, the first 2 do look alike a little bit. Okay, and they were very similar. William Taft, the incumbent, the guy that had just won, had only won 2 electoral states. Theodore Roosevelt wins all of the states out west. Okay, and then, of course, he wins New York, Teddy Roosevelt, because he used to live in New York. All right, but most of the time, Woodrow Wilson is going to win the southern states. Okay, if you count up the electoral votes, basically, Woodrow Wilson is going to win because Taft and Roosevelt took votes away from each other. Now, if you were to do the math and William Taft and Theodore Roosevelt didn't take votes away from each other, I think Theodore Roosevelt's going to win. So Theodore Roosevelt really should be the 28th president again. But since Taft and Roosevelt took votes away from each other, it became a non-issue. Okay? The Bull Moose Party eventually dissolved back into the Republican Party, but like the Populist Party, if you remember back from the Granger movement, it's considered a successful 3rd party because then the Republican Party started to become more progressive. All right, that was maybe one of the knocks on the Progressive Party was, the Republican Party, they didn't do enough progressive things and enough reform and change, and that's what a lot of people wanted. Okay? So that leads to Woodrow Wilson becoming president. Okay? Now, he's going to do 2 things. For the progressive era. He's going to be the president that creates the Clayton Antitrust Act, which we've already learned about. So again, another president that's coming in and stopping monopolies. But this is now a law to kind of solidify it. Okay? He's also going to create the Federal Reserve System. Okay, he's going to create the Federal Reserve System, which is a little complicated. So we're going to really take our time and go over it. All right, so let's look at that Federal Reserve System here in a minute after these 2 Regents questions. What is the best explanation of the 1912 election results? I think a very simple question after the notes, but can be a real nightmare if you forget which election 1912 was. Ooh, we got some 2s, we got some 4s. We got some 2s. All right, I love to stump you guys. Some 2s, some 4s, 2, 4, 2, 4. Okay. Guys, the correct answer is 2. Woodrow Wilson benefited from a split in the Republican Party. Reason why it can't be 4, okay, reason why it can't be 4 is its trick. Theodore Roosevelt is not a minor candidate. Okay, he's a major candidate, so the wording of it's a little tricky. A minor candidate is someone who wins like 1% of the vote. Okay, someone who has very little effect. Okay, that's a minor candidate. Theodore Roosevelt's not a minor candidate, so choose the best answer. That's not an easy question, though. The populist and Bulmos parties were third political parties that disappeared because their ideas were what? This is pretty much every third political party ever. That one is 3. Okay, eventually taken over by the major political parties. Now, how many political parties are there in the United States right now? 20. 30. Okay, but really it's just 2. It's just Republicans and Democrats, and you have these smaller political parties that are kind of attached to these major political parties. You know, so like there's a political party called the Libertarian Political Party. They are sometimes more aligned with Republicans. You have a Democratic Socialist Party, which is very similar to the Democrats in our country. So they're all under the kind of same group. All right, good. All right, slide 4 out of 5. Almost done here. First, look at his New Freedom Plan, which I saw come up on the Regents once. It came up 2 years ago, and we were not prepared as a class, and now we are going to make sure we're prepared. Was the last part on the other slide. You could just scroll up to Justin. Justin wrote it down, I believe. Bull Moose Party eventually dissolved into a Republican Party like the Populist Party was. I think that's what it was. Okay, so to make sure you're paying attention, you do have a secret coded word today. That secret coded word is New Freedom. This is 2 words. Okay, New Freedom is your secret coded word. Make sure it's on the top of your notes so you get full credit for today's assignment. And we'll look at what that is. So 2 years ago, we took a Regents exam, and this was in June 2019. All right, and very smart group of kids. Really, there was some really good, smart kids in that class. And 50 of the questions, multiple choice, were there for them. And then this was the one question that came up dealing with Wilson's New Freedom that I did not prepare them for. Now, you generally, when you take your Regents exam, there's always going to be one question or maybe 2 where we don't really go over it too much. In 2 of the 4 years we've taken the Regents exam, this has happened, and the other 2, we've covered everything in class, so I felt good. But this was one of those that the kids were not prepared for, so now obviously we have to make sure. So Wilson ran on the campaign New Freedom. Pretty much every presidential candidate will have a presidential slogan. Obviously Donald Trump's big one in 2016 was Make America Great Again. Let's see, I'm drawing a blank right now. Joe Biden campaign slogan, is, this one wasn't quite as popular, but it was like battle for the soul of the nation, win back the soul of the nation. Woodrow Wilson's was New Freedom. Okay, so his idea was he wanted to give people that were struggling in the country a new opportunity to succeed, or a new freedom. So it's basically giving people economic freedom. That was his whole point. And the 2 ways he was going to do this was, number 1, to lower tariffs. He wanted less tax on imported goods, which you don't really have to know about too much. What you do have to know is the Federal Reserve System. Okay, and what he wanted is he wanted the working class, which is another group of another term for the poor or middle class. Okay, the people that are working. Okay, working basic jobs. Okay, he wanted to give them a better opportunity to succeed. Okay, he felt the Gilded Age presidents, okay, were, too much about the rich people, the big business. So he wanted to be more along the line of helping the working class succeed. Now, both Teddy Roosevelt and William Taft kind of wanted the same thing, but he was a lot more open and campaigning about it, okay, because we still have a lot of people that are struggling and poor in the country. All right, and he created something known as the Federal Reserve Act, okay, which then led to the Federal Reserve System. So the act led to the government system. Now, this is a controversial system today. Some people do not really like what's called the Fed. Okay, this is an AP US history thing. You don't have to really know what the Fed is just yet, but we're going to look at how the Fed, or the Federal Reserve System, what its main goal was. Now, you don't really have to know why it is controversial today, but just know that there's a lot of people that think the Federal Reserve System is really just a waste of time. Okay, so let's look at what it is. So I first want to start with the banks. Okay, basically, you remember how under Hamilton we had one national bank? Okay, and we continued that national bank until Andrew Jackson, and then eventually Andrew Jackson vetoed the charter, and then we stopped having national banks for a while. We're going to go back to having national banks. We're not going to have one anymore. We're going to have 12. Can anyone take a guess why we went from having one national bank to 12? Why did we go from having one national bank to 12? Money got bigger. Partially true. Yes. More states. Partially true. Need more places to store. Okay. You guys are kind of on the right track. The reason why we need 12, is we have a much larger country. Okay, and since we have a much larger country, we need to have regions or zones, as you can kind of tell. Okay, so the tri-state area, New York, number 2, they have their own kind of Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, the Northeast, okay, out west, 12. You see how it's broken up with numbers here. Basically, we break up regions, okay, to have more of these, the federal government to have control over the money circulations. Okay, so these 12 federal banks are working under the one national central bank for the federal government. Okay, so basically, yes, I did. New Freedom, it's called. That's the secret code. All right. So each one of these federal banks are responsible for a particular area. Now, you are more familiar with this than you guys think. Do you know what district PS 89 is in? 11. Okay, so you guys are kind of familiar with this process already. Now, in District 11, you're going to have your own superintendent. You're going to have your own leaders in District 11, right? And then you get to PS 89. You know how the federal system works. You have your own principal, okay? But District 11 is under the one chancellor of New York City Schools, who is running it with Mayor de Blasio. Okay, Richard Carranza is his name, if you're not familiar. Okay, our Federal Reserve Bank system works the same way. You have the federal banks that are in control of certain areas, and then they work with the federal government. Okay, so what do they actually do? Well, there's that word regulate again. They're going to help control. They're making sure that the money that is being used in their particular district is being used fairly and is being distributed in a proper way. Okay, there's no monopolies and stuff like that. And it's going to help circulate the money throughout the United States. How do you make sure that money is being circulated? Okay, it is up to these federal banks. So you want to make sure that these particular areas are having jobs open. You're making sure that people are buying products. Okay, and these federal banks are going to oversee that. Okay, and then of course it supervises other smaller banks underneath them, just like our principal, Mr. Martinez, has to work with the superintendent of District 11. Okay, and that's kind of how this whole federal banking system works. And the reason is they want to make sure that the price of the dollar isn't so volatile or crazy. Now, this is a very complicated thing to try and explain to 8th graders, let alone anyone. But basically, you don't want the prices of things to get all crazy high for people and they can't afford them. You also don't want them to get too low. Okay, you don't want the Xbox One, or I'm sorry, the new PlayStation, right? You don't want the PS5. Okay, you don't want that to be only $5. Okay, you don't want it to be too little money either. You want to have it at a fair price. You also don't want the PS5 to be $10,000. Okay, because it's not going to be a good price where people are going to buy it. You want to make sure that it's kind of kept to be a fair price. So we are no longer laissez-faire when it comes to this particular economy now, because now the Federal Reserve System is going to be there to regulate and circulate money to make sure it's being done properly. Okay, if you don't understand fully what the Federal Reserve System does, it's okay. What you need to understand is it's basically a national bank times 12. Okay, so the federal government has a lot more control over the economy now. All right, and let's take a look, see if there's any questions. The creation of the Federal Reserve System was an attempt to what? Good. Regulate's another word for control. Control the money supply. Make sure it's being processed correctly. During the Progressive Era, Presidents Theodore Roosevelt, William Taft, and Woodrow Wilson broke with the policies of late 19th century presidents concerning what? Yep, 3 is correct as well. Okay? No more laissez-faire. What I would like to say is this. There are certain aspects of our government that is still laissez-faire and hands-off, but we are no longer 100% laissez-faire. The government is involved in the economy. Okay? No more than the last slide you're going to write down, which I have no problem saying it is Mr. Panio's least favorite amendment. Okay, we're going to learn about the 16th Amendment. Yep, Milagros, we're about to make it 3. Here's the last slide. Okay, please copy down what's in red. You're going to learn Mr. Panio's. I tell you when I'm being biased, I hate the 16th Amendment. Okay, my least favorite amendment. All right, we'll learn what the 16th Amendment is. You already know the 17th Amendment, but I am going to re-go over it just to make sure we're on the same page. But let's look at what the 16th Amendment is. Okay, so let me make sure you guys are understanding of this because I'm not sure if you are. Let's say you work a job, okay, and you make $100 off that job and you get a paycheck. Roughly how much of that money are you actually going to get in your hand or into your bank? Does anyone know roughly, if you get a job for $100, how much money will you actually receive? 60%, 70%? Well, really, it's a tricky question because it depends how much money you already have. So we have something what's known as the progressive income tax. We're not learning what that is just yet. But somewhere around $65 to $75 is what you're going to actually receive. Okay? Prior to 1913, if you worked a job and made $100, you got all of that money. That was all yours to keep. Here's what happens after 1913 by Woodrow Wilson. They come up with an amendment, a constitutional amendment, that now requires an income tax. And the income tax back in American history basically was very simple. Very simple. It said, no matter what your income was from a job, you have to pay a tax that goes to the federal government. Okay? Because we know taxes. We know why it's important for the government to operate and make money. All right? Here's the problem. Back in 1913, people got taxed at a rate right around 2 to 3%. So it wasn't a big deal. You got paid $100 from a job. You had to give $2 or $3 to the government. That was it. Okay? Now Americans with this income tax are paying 25 to 30% in income tax. If you're really poor, maybe it's only 18 to 19%. But most people are somewhere between the 25 to 30% range. Okay? Now, depending on who the president is, depends how much tax money goes up. Okay, and generally there's a correlation. The more the government does for you, okay, the higher the higher your income taxes. Now, later on, okay, in this class, I will show you my paycheck for when we get to the Great Depression. I will show you my paycheck because I think it's important for you to see how taxes work, what gets taken out, what goes to what, and basically what you get left with. So basically the idea is this: the more the government does for you, the higher your income taxes. Okay, so if a president, I mean, seriously, I want to ask you a question because you'll have to deal with this in 3-4 years. Who wants to go to college and let me ask you this question. Who wants to go to college for free? It's a fair question. Who wants to go to college for free? Okay, that'd be awesome, right? Here's the thing. It's not free. College won't technically be free. It just means people's taxes go up. How do you pay for these things? Well, it's not going to be free. You have to get it kind of from somewhere. So what that means is your parents or your friends or you eventually, you will be paying for that free college. When basically the idea is this: when a politician says something is free, it's not necessarily exactly free. It just means that it's got to be paid for by the country, by the government. And when it's paid for by the government, that usually means taxes have to go up. Okay, so the correlation is the more the government does, the higher the tax it is. Isn't it worth it though? Sure, depends. What if Anicia, what if a kid doesn't go to college? This is the counterpoint, right? So if a kid doesn't go to college, their taxes are going up, okay? And now they didn't go to college, they're not benefiting from it. Sure, you can get scholarships, of course, right? So like my brother didn't go to college, he went to the military though. My brother who didn't go to college, his taxes would go up to pay for people to go to college who he's never met before. Won't college become worth it since it's free? It can, but no. It can. I know what you're saying. Since it's free, it will become worthless. But remember, it's not free. It just costs other people money. It's maybe free to you, but it doesn't mean it's a free thing. Scholarships are not usually scholarships from tax money. No, they're usually from donations or charity or from the college themselves. That's why Republicans don't like taxes. I mean, that's a very complicated question, Maheen. There's a lot of reasons. I think Republicans generally don't like as much tax. They don't like as high taxes because they're spending money on things maybe they don't deem to be not necessarily important, but that people could pay for on their own. All right, we'll talk more about Republicans and Democrats when it comes to taxes later on in this class. But ultimately is this: after the 16th Amendment, everyone gets an income tax. And what's happened since 1913, since the Progressive Era, is the government's taken on more and more responsibility for people. Okay? Things that used to not be free for people are now free. Healthcare is a great example. Okay, if you want free healthcare, that's fine. There's no reason to think, that's fine if you think so, if you find things not. Okay, you may think healthcare is a right, everyone should have it. That's perfectly fine. But guys, it ain't going to be free. So what's that going to mean? That's going to mean that taxes are going to go up. And when you guys get older and you guys get a paycheck and you say, okay, I made $3,000 this month. Okay, it's great, but I'm only seeing $1,900 of it. It gets frustrating at times. And then you say, okay, well, where's my tax money going to? It's going to this and going to that. And you're like, okay, I'm good with some of these things. And then some of these things, like, I'm not so good with. Like, I don't want my tax money. I don't want to waste $100 to $150 a month on this. Okay, and this is where politics becomes a little bit of a chess game, so to speak. But the 16th Amendment is very simple. It establishes an income tax. Basically, if you have a job, the government's going to take money out of your paycheck. Okay, certain jobs, if you own a business, they don't take money out of your paycheck, but you have to report it, and then you have to write a check to the government. Okay. Before this, the only things that were taxed were products that were bought. What I'll also say is, before I let you guys go, is we've done the 17th Amendment already. How do people do? I can't answer that, and I can't even answer that in a minute. That's a very complicated question. When was the IRS created? I'm not sure, Anicia, but definitely after the 1913, probably the 1920s or 30s. But you could look that up. The 17th Amendment is also known as a Progressive Era Amendment, which we've already learned about. And then eventually, when you guys get to Unit 5, you'll learn about the 18th and 19th Amendment. Now, that's also a part of the Progressive Era Amendments, but I want to work on those when we get to the 1920s. All right. So it is 11:08. I will see you all tomorrow. I'll answer that in a second, Emmanuel. I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll watch a review video on pretty much all of Unit 4. Well, I gross, because my class is so interesting, I think. I think that would be the answer. So it says, you save money on taxes if you keep receipts, right? You can, Emmanuel, but basically you can take what's called deductions, which can save you money. It's not like if you just save the receipt, you save money. That's not how it works. But if you could report certain things were for a job or for a certain expense, you can then save money. Let's see. All right. Okay, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.